Nerderotic.com.
Welcome back to Nerdrotic. My name is Gary, and I come to you from Nerdrotic.com, and we need to talk about Game of Thrones fans and fandom. Now that the collapse of Season 8 is complete and the collapse of the once greatest show on TV, the dust is settling, and we are asking why. Well, we know why. It was rushed. They took the fans for granted. They had one foot out the door, being Dan and Dee. They were on their way to Star Wars. George didn't feel the need to finish the book because everything was wine and roses. Everything was great, but Dan and Dave didn't stick the landing, and now you pay the consequences. It must be extremely intoxicating to receive all of that love and adoration from the fans and fandom when you create a work that most everybody loves, but sometimes that bites back. But it is still very necessary to create the biggest show in the world. You need fan passion, fan enthusiasm that is often confused with fan entitlement. Fan entitlement is something that's been thrown around a lot at Game of Thrones fans. Well, if you're new to that, it's a tired old argument that has been thrown around at Star Wars fans, Star Trek fans, Doctor Who fans, Marvel Comics fans, gamers, and fans of everything who have ever complained about anything. It is an argument, I believe, created by the creatives to justify their aversion to criticism. Now, aversion to criticism is human nature. I completely understand that. But the human ability to rationalize is human nature as well. Criticism goes right along with passion. And you love that adoration, don't you, creatives? That's why you create what you do, because you want the attention. That is totally okay. I am not judging that at all. But you have to at least understand the fan when they don't like your work, listen to them, and try to do better next time. And if you acknowledge that and treat them with respect, really the fan criticism won't be that bad. And it's not necessary. We are all about discourse and debate. And that is what fandom has always been and always will be. A lot of it is tongue-in-cheek, but some people don't understand that. Now, the petition, that has been a hot topic lately. Well, the petition was created to make a point. That was it. Nobody expected them to actually remake Season 8. So it was just a point, it was just an outlet, and I think that fact flew over a lot of people's heads, or a lot of people in the access media, or to bolster their argument for liking the show. And if you like the show, fine. They used it to push the narrative of the entitled fan, like I said, which is a total myth. We can all talk to each other a lot easier now, so it might seem a little louder. It might seem it's louder right now because you are a fan of Game of Thrones, but this has been going on since the beginning of fandom. Trust me, I've been around fandom for 40 plus years. One of the things we are fighting here in the Fandom Menace is people using our entertainment that we use for escapism, and that is it. It's really that simple. We just want to turn our brains off and be entertained for a little while and not be preached at or subjected to the writer's personal politics with a limited world view. I have the perfect article as an example for this. From the New Republic, fans are ruining Game of Thrones and everything else. How art and culture became captured by the logic of the consumer market. Now, I'm not going to read you this whole article. I will actually link this in the description. I rarely do, but you do have to read the whole thing. I will give you the context of the writer's argument. The writer is John Greenway. He is an academic from the UK. Now, this channel is generally a political free zone, and it will remain that way. Don't worry, this is not me taking up the bad habit of politics. The author of this article uses an argument against fandom blaming a political system, because he's using Game of Thrones and fandom to point out that the reason Game of Thrones failed and fandom failed was because of capitalism. It was bound to end this way, given its colossal success, cultural saturation, and the impossible expectations that come from being event television. The Game of Thrones finale was always going to be a contentious affair, but it didn't need to, and I will point that out later. The overwhelming response was disappointment. I will agree with them there. The worst finale ever. I will agree with them there in this magazine's howling formulation, but disappointment in Season 8 has taken on many forms, including what has now, nearly 20 years into the 21st century, become a familiar sight. The evil, vile, viral fan petition demanding a rewrite and a brand new Season 8. I still can't believe that people, especially an academic here, takes this seriously. Now, this is the point where the article tends to blather on a bit, and I'm on my channel. I'm the only one who's going to be blathering here. And honestly, he's doing this to build up to his hypothesis, and he wants to bury his hypothesis because it's quite ridiculous. So in this paragraph, he brings up Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes, bringing back Sherlock Holmes because fans didn't like his other work. I don't know what this has to do with Game of Thrones. He also brings up that social media has turned everybody into a critic. Yes, or does it just show that critics are pretty useless because it's just people with opinions? So if you're following along at home, his first paragraph basically said, look at that petition. What fan entitlement? His second paragraph said, wow, the internet has made a lot of critics. But don't worry, folks. There's only 9 paragraphs to go. Now, this one's important, so I'm going to read it to you, and he's talking about the comments in the petition. Yet there is something worth paying attention to in the latest petition from fans keen to have a creative work made the way they want it. The comments on the petition are instructive. Amidst the usual griping, the final season is not Game of Thrones anymore. It is garbage, a slap in the face. Yeah, the most common sentiment is some variation of the disappointment caused by all that has been invested in the show. This is key here. Fans invested their time, 8 years, and their energy, so many Sunday nights, and their money, HBO isn't free, supporting the show, and now they realize their mounting rage, that this investment has not paid off. The return has been less than what was expected. You catching where this guy's going yet? If so, you're clever. If not, I totally understand, but it's rich. Hang with me. Okay, this one, not going to read the whole thing to you. Going to read you a sentence just to give you a hint of where he is going. It gets a little blathery at this point, but you will start getting an idea of what argument this guy is framing. Again, the disappointment from Game of Thrones is because it simply wasn't written well. That's it. That's really it. It wasn't written well. It doesn't mean anything else than that. People are voicing their disappointment because they can on the internet. Let's get to the article before I start blathering too much. Within this, he brings up a guy named Frederick Jameson, who I've never heard of, and I'm going to try to catch the good sentence to start out here. As late as the 1960s, Jameson said, it was still possible to argue that the cultural occupied an autonomous space outside of or in some way distinct from capitalism. But in the era of franchise entertainment and increasingly homogenized cultural production, where films and television and even books are judged as success based on the money they bring in, such a space is increasingly unthinkable. So it's not a surprise that as the economic and the culture have become increasingly interlinked, these instances of fan protest have become more intense and more protracted. Not true, son. This stuff has been going on for a very long time and will be for a very long time. Again, welcome to the party. So he goes on to say that it's harder for this stuff to exist outside of capitalism. He basically says they are homogenizing the entertainment to make it a more reliable commodity for this type of fan. He then goes on to talk about FOMO, fear of missing out, emotional investment, passion, basically people really being into stuff. And again, this is a certain type of fan, a fan that can't be satisfied, a fan that is the problem. In this paragraph, in my opinion, he repeats his argument by saying the fan outrage stems from the need for a stable commodity. Oh, this dude has overthought this. So when buyers do not get what they want, or were led to believe they could expect, all they can do is the equivalent of asking for a refund or exchange. I don't think anybody's really honestly asked for that. I think people have canceled their subscription and complained on the internet. I fully believe that 99.9% of us are going to move on from this once we've had our say. We're having a little fun. Again, this is fandom, son. After all, they didn't get what they paid for. And the ideology of contemporary capitalism has made an axiom truth out of the customer always being right. Okay, in the comments section, I want you all to guess what type of sweater this guy wears, because he definitely wears a sweater. Thanks to this logic, the fan tends toward arrangements that are strangely literalist, says the man who is taking the petition literally. The product is what it is, and can only be that. Hence, the complaint on the petition that the 8th season didn't feel like Game of Thrones, which shows the extent to which the fan depends upon pop culture living up to its product's description. This is, of course, entirely at odds with the endless interpretability of art and highlights the ways in which, even though the ethos of capitalism has sunk into the core of how we think about culture, there is still a moment in which this slips beyond the reach of the market. The dissatisfaction of the fans who sign these petitions signals the limit of the capitalist logic to seek to be the frame in which every culture engagement takes place. Wow, this guy sits around all day trying to figure out how he can take every argument, every single thing that exists in the world, and make it an argument against capitalism. Now, I am just a simple man, salt of the earth, California public school educated, didn't make it past 10th grade, have trouble spelling my own name. But I think what he's saying is capitalism is bad, and even worse is the capitalist fan. We are nearing the climax of his hypotheses, of his manifesto. What's needed is a move away from the perpetual disappointed figure of the fan, rather than see a given cultural text or culture more generally as reinforcing and satisfying a consumer/service provider relationship. Audiences must judge and engage with art outside of the logic of what they think they are owed. Again, passionate responses being confused for the feeling of being owed something. Pop culture doesn't need fans, but it could use some more fandom. At its best, fandom is playful, participatory, and dialogic engagement with a work of art, exploring it, remaking it, rewriting it. Fandom tends not to see the text in dogmatic terms, but as a mutable creation that lends itself to multiple interpretations. Just as the fan was birthed by contemporary capitalism, so too was fandom, helped by the rise of networked technologies, message boards, listservs, Tumblr accounts, and much more besides. What we need, in other words, are fewer petitions and more fan fiction. In fandom, we see the possibility of multiplicity that exist beyond the frustrations and dissatisfactions of consumers who feel like they didn't get the right return on their investment. Abolish this canonical consumer approach to pop culture. Abolish the fan consumer and liberate pop culture from the stultifying logic of the service industry and market capitalism. Let's not view culture as a product to own, but as a creative space in which to share something beyond price, profit, exchange, and loss. So according to our writer, fans and fandom are two completely different things. One's a flowery, beautiful, unicorn-riding, ice cream pooping collective that loves everything about art and changes it and shares it and doesn't trade it as an evil commodity. And the fan is this evil, entitled, selfish being that will never be satisfied. Well, I understand how he would see the world like that. I would understand the person who wrote this article seeing the world that black and white. Unfortunately, that's not how the world is, son. But this is how the media works. Just as I was making this video, my good friend, the official Dougie J, brought me this article, which is blaming, of course, the fans and capitalism, coming from two independent sources a week apart. That doesn't reek of coordination at all. Or maybe plagiarism. Do I have to say out loud that Game of Thrones wouldn't have been as big a show as it is without the free market? Do I have to say this out loud? Oh boy. Okay. For one, it's called pop culture, which is short for popular culture. What makes it popular? That is a lot of people liking it. That is mass market entertainment. What can provide that? A big business with a lot of money. And they do that. Stems from the free market. The free market created pop culture. The free market created Game of Thrones. It would have never gotten this big if it wasn't for the free market. So, whether you like it or not, those are the facts. That is the truth. Now, this mass disappointment because people want a reliable commodity. In other words, we want something mundane and homogenized that will just please us at the end, and we want this out of all of our art. Nobody expects that from their art, unless you're trying to shoehorn some weird political argument into the fan descent of Game of Thrones, which is what I suspect you're doing. I think you stay up all night trying to shoehorn this argument into everything you do. Good luck with that. Sounds like a real fun lifestyle. In the meantime, I'll be complaining about Game of Thrones for as long as I need to, then I'll move on. Then I might complain about something else, or I'll find something I love. I'm looking forward to Good Omens, which premieres tonight. In the meantime, if you're dissatisfied with any of the franchises you grew up with, go ahead and make your own stuff. Absolutely. I wouldn't waste time on fan fiction because the creative pool is not infinite. You only have so much in you, so it's better to use it on something that you can possibly profit from, or something you will at least enjoy and know that it is your own. I have a suggestion for John. Practice what you preach. Give back the money you were paid for that article and allow anybody who wants to edit it. Please go to nerdrotic.com for my live stream schedule. Everybody have a great day, and may the free folks sing songs of your greatness.